Welcome to the fourth video in this series, and welcome to kind of what will be a deep dive into one particular text. We're going to get in the weeds a little bit, but hopefully as we're talking about the Bible over these next couple weeks, this will give you something to really sink your teeth into, hypothetically speaking. We're going to be talking about this verse from Romans 8:28 that talks about God working things together for good, or at least that's what most people think it to mean. But first of all, we talked a little bit about translation and how there's different English words. Well, there's also different idioms or ways of saying things in different languages that don't always line up with what we think. So in Germany, they have a saying, "You have tomatoes on your eyes," which basically means you're not seeing what everyone else can see. In Portugal, they talk about "pay the duck," which basically means take the blame for something you did not do. In Argentina, look for the fifth leg of the cat, which is something looking for something that isn't there. It's like paying piano to a cow. That's how the saying goes in China, a situation where someone's not appreciative of your efforts. Sing to the apple in Quebec, to flirt with someone. Interesting. Let a frog out of your mouth is a Finnish saying, which is to say the wrong thing. And a dog in church in Italy is an unwanted guest. If you're born to be a tamale, the leaves will fall from the sky. If it's meant to be, it will happen to you, which is similar to the statement that we're going to talk about in Romans 8:28. But have you ever seen a situation where it was some tragic accident and then people would say, well, God works it all for good? Well, what are they saying? And does that really help? I would argue that it doesn't, that most people find that really difficult in the moment to handle something like that. So what is being said when we use this verse, Romans 8:28? Here's what it says in the King James Version. And we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are called according to his purpose. So, if someone says, my friend were to say, oh, it all works to good, what are they saying and what does it mean? Well, again, as we think about in front of, behind, within, we're really going to go deeply within the text. So here's the Greek text. Here's how we would transliterate it into the script that we would read rather than the Greek script. And here's another way of saying it. We know now that to those loving God, all things work together for good, okay, sorry, let me start over. Here it is in just transliteration, word for word. We know now that to those loving God, all things works together, God for good, to those according to his purpose, called being. This is why, remember I said how difficult it is to give a word for word translation. If that was how your Bible read, it'd be really hard to actually read it. And that's why translators have to phrase it either into kind of a word for word or a meaning for meaning. We wouldn't want to read a Bible like the last line on this slide. So here's the phrase that people sort of draw out, this idea of all things work together for good. It's commonly interpreted that, bad things never really happen because what seems bad serves God's purposes. So bad things are ultimately good. The problem is it doesn't seem kind of unjust that those who love God get everything to work out. And what happens if bad things don't really actually work out as we think they should be? Again, here's part of the deep dive. So here's the word, these two words, the yellow and the green, panta, synergy. Those are two key words that we need to look at. So the King James translators viewed panta, all things, as the subject of the verb. We're getting into English, I know, and learning a little bit of English language grammar here. And then the verb was to work together. The problem is synergy doesn't mean to work out as to fall into place. And then the scriptures never attribute goodwill and active working to all things. Like that's almost a worldview that just doesn't line up with the Bible. Like, oh, all things are going to work out. All things, yeah, it's okay. All things are going to work out. That's a problem. And so a more accurate translation would be, as the NIV says it, we know that in all things God works together. So older, more reliable translations or manuscripts talk about God. So God would be the subject of the verb, to work together. And then actually that makes more sense, right? That God is working. So it isn't all things are working, but it's God who's working. That seems to fit. But then there's a this more accurate translation does have a problem. Synergy in Greek is never about one person, but it's always about more than one party working together. So it stops too short. If we think that God works everything together for good, it doesn't represent this word well. So here would be a preferred translation, and I'll just read the red. In all things, God works together with those who love him to bring about what is good. That's a very different way of reading it than the very beginning, right? And the way that people often state it. You can read the details, and I'll just let you do that on this slide. And you've got the slides actually in the Canvas course as well that you can be following along with. So the conclusion is that it's not about making things work. It's about two parties working together, us, people who follow God, and God working together for good. So what does this mean? It means that God is sending us to those feeling separated. God is giving Christians the opportunity to give grace, and we join together with God to bring about good things in the lives of others. That's very different than people saying, oh, God works everything, or everything will work out. It means that we have a responsibility to be with our neighbors, to interact with them, to suffer with the suffering, to sit with the hurting, and to be people who will bring good out of all these things. See you in the next video.